This podcast is intended for mature audiences and contains adult language and subject matter. Listeners, please be advised.
All right, welcome back to the next episode of Drinking with Your Ex.
Yes, it's been a while, everyone.
We have been a while. I would say we went on a month-long sabbatical from recording, so bear with us. We're a little rusty coming back to this, but welcome back. Yes.
We might be rusty. We've missed you. All 5 listeners in Peoria, Indiana.
Oh, we love you, Peoria, Indiana. You're our faves. All right, my name is Bonnie Neal.
And I am Blake Thompson. This is another stunning edition of Drinking with Your Ex and other poor life decisions you can make in your
While drinking
40s.
with your ex. All right, so we're bringing this podcast to you because we are exes who find ourselves both single over 40 with wildly strong opinions about why both of us are still single and over 40.
And wild opinions about dating in general.
Oh, yeah, you do. You know, we have plenty of opinions in which we're here to share with you for your edification. You're welcome. All right, so then there are three rules to this podcast. The first one is...
we get to introduce the other.
Yes, thus engaging in edge play, having your ex introduce you to the world. Second rule is every podcast is brought to you today based on a certain particular kind of alcohol, which we will get to in a moment. And the third rule is...
The third rule is the funnest and fun edge play.
Honest and fun.
Where we get to ask each other an uncomfortable question about today's topic.
And there's no backing out. You must
No backing
answer.
out. No, there's no takebacks. You have to answer, no matter how uncomfortable or how embarrassing or
How sordid and
or
revealing.
hilarious it may be.
Yes, especially to the other person. Yay, drinking with your ex. All right. Today's topic, we're going to get to it all, but today's topic is basically what to say on a first date when you're dating over 40. It is different. And we're going to kind of get into that. But starting off, today's episode is brought to you by...
Which alcohol? As we look at the menu.
I feel like it should be brought to us by the Prisoner Red Wine. If you've ever felt like you're stuck in your chair and cannot leave.
But here's a question about the Prisoner Red Wine. Is that the one with Martha Stewart on it? Because she now has her own bottle of...
How can you even suggest I would have Martha Stewart wine in my fucking house? Do you even know me? Have we met?
But again, Martha Stewart on a bottle of red wine because she has street cred. She served time and she loves Snoop Dogg.
I have nothing to say to you. Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, my partner in crime for this travesty of a podcast. Ladies and gentlemen.
I'm getting introduced.
You are. And I started it this time. You're welcome. I can learn. Man, I did have something good and I just totally blanked out on it. This is what happens when you sort of pregame before you actually start podcasting.
Normally, you're so good at this.
It's true. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Blake Thompson, my partner in crime. He has many, many degrees from therapy school, which most people would think means that he's a good listener. He is. I would also like to point out that he is a trained manipulator of minds. Just always keep that in the back of your head.
As you paint a lovely picture of me.
It's
Thanks.
true. I mean, I'm not wrong. There you go. I was looking for something accurate and mean. You're welcome.
Accurate and mean. Right on. So, Bonnie Neal, who has numerous degrees from NYU, and you know what NYU stands for, everyone? Now you're useless.
And in debt. There's
And in
parentheses
extreme
over that.
debt.
Now you're useless, parentheses, and in debt.
They look lovely on her wall, or I think they might be in a box in the back room. I'm not sure.
Can't afford nails. Sorry.
As we're pushing 40. Does our education matter? It might.
It always seemed to continue to, both, against all reason. But I liked it. I like that we were both pretty lazy and mean in our introductions for each other. All right, now that we're coming to you with red wine, prisoner wine, today's topic. What to say on a first date. So Blake and I were sort of tossing around topic ideas, and it was getting later and later and later because we always just kind of wait for something that kind of sparks up, right? Where we both get excited about talking with each other and both kind of maybe not quite sure what to say.
But we hit on the what to say during your first date. And we both got excited, started laughing, and realized, oh, we have to record this.
Yeah, this is our topic. Mainly because, I've been on a lot of first dates. I've not been on as many. I do have some friends that are like professional fucking daters. Like they are just, man, they can fit in like 5 to 15 every week. I cannot do that. But I've been on enough first dates to know that there has been sort of a change in, one might say, the decades, right? Teenage to 20s, the first dates conversations go differently to the 30s. 40s, it is different. Well, actually, it is different. I'm just not quite sure how or why. Like, what's the right way for it to be different?
Our priorities change, like, because your priorities in your 20s are all like, I'm gonna do body shots at 3:30 in the morning at this undisclosed dirty dive bar because that sounds like a great idea. Then you realize in your 30s, no, it wasn't a great idea. So you're gonna start day drinking. You learn about day drinking.
And picking up people.
Which you master by the time you hit your 40s, because all of a sudden day drinking is so much more fun than staying out till 3 o'clock in the morning trying to catch a cab.
I'm so much better day drinker than I am a night drinker these days. It's totally true.
Totally true. We all like to go to bed at 9 o'clock, everyone. You're welcome.
All right, I'm going to break down your kind of general and slightly funny differences. So, all right, so I would say maybe the goals of what you're trying to find out in the first date have changed. I would say first dates in your like teenage years and 20s, I feel like what you're really trying to figure out is, do I want to sleep with this person tonight, tomorrow,
or next week?
Next week, right? It is an answer to the first, it's basically like yes or no, right? And when. Those are the answers you're looking for, right?
Do I want to see your pieces part naked? And you're sitting there having that conversation in your head while you're asking about so what do you do for a living? Where have you been? Where have you lived? Why are you here?
Dude, I don't think I actually had those conversations when I was in my 20s. I mean, first date conversations, they were, talking about movies, talking about hobbies, talking about weekends, talking about maybe school, right? But I don't think I really got that.
What kind of drugs are we going to do in the bathroom?
Kind of, right? Or like, what kind of weird sex positions we've gotten into, like they were more fun, more light, more less.
Because in your 40s, getting your foot behind your head is a little bit more difficult than it used to be.
It does require some stretching ahead of time, maybe some yoga poses. Right. So like, do I want to sleep with you, and when do I want to sleep with you? These are the things you're trying to figure out in those dates.
How do I want to sleep with you?
How do I want to sleep with you? Yeah, that's true. That does come in later. I feel like in the 30s, dating in your 30s, the question first needs to be asked, actually, and I don't know, maybe this is a gendered thing, and please tell me if this is does this person want family, kids? Like that, I feel like is the kind of question that needs to get across.
Or why doesn't this person have a family or kid?
But 30s is when like that's when everybody is kind of sorting out, right?
Late 20s, early 30s, you're starting to get there. It's like you're getting that nesting feel. You want to get together, get married.
Or you don't. You want to run like somebody's just offered you hives.
Oh my God. I mean, I don't know about you, but I have negative phrases for children. It's like...
You're like, children, you mean parasites in your body for 9 months that don't pay rent? There's a hell of a thing that I have said on.
Or like my two favorites, semen demons or crotch goblins, because those are...
all of the charming things.
All the charming things when you see little children and people walk up, look at my cute baby. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm a vegetarian.
So, I mean, absolutely nobody out there is shocked that we're both still single based on that particular stretch of conversation. But right, but those are the kind of things that you're figuring out on first dates, right? In your 30s.
Exactly.
It does get into those kinds of things.
It does. And you start answering those questions, you start asking those questions.
Yes.
And people start looking at you funny, like,
I do think first dates in the 30s do sometimes come to feel a little bit more like job interviews. Teenage years and 20s, it's more about sexual partner auditions. And then I think in your 30s, you start lingering into the job interview parts of it. Like, what do you do for a living? Have you been married before? Do you want kids? Are you good with your boss? What's your career prospects? How much money do you make?
So are you a local or did you move here?
Yeah, well, that's Austin, which is kind of the perennial question.
Where are you from? What brought you to Austin,
Or what brought you to New York, yeah.
Yeah, it's like you always ask those questions, but when you meet a local, you're like, what?
Unicorns. So, I mean, what are we trying to find out about each other in a first date when we're 40? Like, what is the goal here?
I think because your priorities change, like the first thing I think of is compatibility.
But compatibility for what?
Okay, compatibility for one. Can you carry a conversation in a 5-gallon bucket?
Okay.
Yeah, that type of compatibility. I mean, like, is there a chemistry? Let me replace the word compatibility with chemistry.
But it's a different chemistry, say, from like the 20s sexual chemistry. Right now it's in what, personality chemistry? Conversationalist chemistry? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I mean, I know for me, it's like I know now. It's like it's not my 20s where it's like, hi, how are you? You know, but
I'm
now
honestly just here to report, ladies, that is exactly what he said to me when I first met him. Hey. No, I'm just teasing.
But I no longer do that. Thank God.
No, I like that you added the snap in there. Yeah. Kind of fun thing.
Because, you know, with this silver hair, what that says.
What, AARP?
Daddy issues.
Shit. Painful but true.
I'm on a roll tonight.
Painful but true. Right. Okay.
Like for me now, it's like it's all about like the chemistry. It's like, can you carry on a conversation? Like, are we intellectually compatible? It's like when you start asking different questions. Like you never asked what political. Like in your 20s, I never asked. Hey, it's like, do you follow politics, or do you do this, or do you do that? Because we were asking, hey, what bars do you like to go to? What clubs do you like to go to? Where do you buy your drugs? You know, like all these different things.
How do you feel about cocaine on the stripper's ass versus her navel? I'm just
you know, it's like small in the back and between those two little dimples.
connoisseur.
It's like, well, you know, it's like you learn these things through trial and error, much like dating in your 40s.
Well, I would say dating in your 40s is definitely a death march of trial and error. Yeah, I'm willing to agree with
Absolutely, it's trial and error.
that. Okay, but I'm resonating with that. Like, I do want them to be able to carry on a conversation. I do want us to be able to talk about, you know, Star Wars, politics, and jobs, and music, and
I'm going to cut in. She mentioned Star Wars. Ladies and gentlemen, like as she loves to call me a nerd, this individual across from me got very, very upset that I hadn't finished The Mandalorian before she did. Because she wanted somebody to talk to about it.
Okay, so to be fair, why are you messing up details? We had finished Mandalorian season 2. You just stopped watching the Book of Boba Fett, and so I had to deal with how absolutely fucking horrible it was, and nobody to talk to about it. I'm just saying, it did swing back and end well at the end, but Jesus, those first ones sucked. Robert Rodriguez, stop. Just stop. Anyway, go ahead.
Again, these questions, you change. Like when you hit your 30s, you start... Your priorities for what compatibility and chemistry look like change.
Yes.
People go on, like, I know we made the jokes earlier, people go on, like, wanting to nest and make families and whatnot.
Yeah.
And some other people, like, chose, like, I know myself, like, in my 30s, I chose to go back to school. And also, and, like, travel and do all the things that families and things that usually can afford one or can't afford the other. It's like, what am I going to do? It's like, hi, have little children or go to England. I'll take England for $100, Alex. So, I mean...
Be responsible for tiny humans or grad school, you know?
Yeah, so, like, I chose grad school. And then, like, now, like, in their 40s, it's like, okay, do I want instant family because I can have it, depending on what type of person I'm attempting to date?
There you go. Okay, so that's exactly... So that does happen, but I feel like the offer of instant family is sort of built into the first date. Like when you're dating in your 40s, you know if the other person, A, is divorced and B, has kids. Or C, none of the above, right? Like those are your three options, right? They're divorced, have kids, or neither, right?
Or neither.
And so the family issue is both on the table or off the table.
And it also depends on, it's like, depending on the individual you're talking to. And I've noticed... The majority of single mothers out there that have been in relationships and divorced are very protective of their children, and they are grooming. And there's a possibility they're looking at you
like a potential child pedophile.
Like yes, exactly.
I mean, like
talk
about a different kind of job.
Okay, does he drive a white panel van and has bags of candy laying everywhere? I mean.
I had not thought about that, but yeah, I mean, I would say like all of my single mother friends who go on dates, I totally evaluate the guy when I finally meet them and being like, all right, where do you fall on the creepy priest level?
Like, where are you at?
I actually go off the creepy priest level because, you know, I've
creepy priest
level. Like, I mean, are you Baptist youth minister, or are we sort of Boston parish Catholic priest?
Or what are you? You're a Reformed Mormon. Ooh.
What does that even mean? What does that even mean?
Depending on where the religious flag flies, are you a cult member or are you just a parishioner?
Okay. Well, before we offend all religions
All 5
out there-
listeners in Peoria, Indiana.
Yeah,
Sorry, everyone.
I mean, we respect all religions equally.
The bourbon is flowing tonight, everybody.
It is. It really is. Okay, so yeah, there's a fun thing I'd not thought about, is like being interviewed as potential child molester groomer. I honestly, single dads, I have dated a few. I really have. I'm not. This is actually a conversation we've had before. Like, I don't want children, and frankly, cannot have children anymore. Yay, team sterilization! But I'm not opposed to being a stepmother. I'm really not. Like, I had 4 of them, and I can tell you good, bad, and ugly about stepmothers. I like kids. I just don't want my own. So single fathers, I found, have been more responsive to me. I do think that they think that I'm not, and I think accurately they think that I'm on a different life path than they are, and they're not incorrect about that. I've seen a lot of single fathers and single mothers perhaps pair better together than they would with me. I'm not opposed to a stepmother, but most of my life plans don't include tiny humans.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to tiny humans. Like, all joking aside, I'm not opposed to tiny humans. But I mean, that's a conversation that will come up on a first date. Do you mind children? And I mean, that could be an instant deal breaker right there for you.
I agree. I mean, and I think one should be honest about it. Like, at this fucking age, what's the point in lying?
Because again, like I said, our priorities change. It's not like in your 20s where you're sitting there going, hey, I'm trying to pick up somebody in a bar, where you're going, I'm looking for somebody to spend time with.
Right. Well, I mean, we're just looking for different things, right? And back to like the stakes of a first date. Like, I'm still not quite sure what to talk about. I don't know what the right level of intimacy is to get into, versus what's the kind of level of Star Wars nerddom in which to gradually, randomly introduce into, conversations.
When is it okay to start talking about, yes, I listened to a podcast about Ted Bundy and Charles Manson today, and it was like...
I mean, you bring that up in first dates, and I find that you bring that up like just chatting a girl up at the bar, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, but it's funny how many women I talk to go, oh my God, I love that podcast. Or like, I totally saw that episode of American Justice.
Yeah, true crime. Yeah, I still don't know quite what to draw conclusions from that. I would take it amiss, honestly, if somebody brought up serial killers as one of their favorite subjects on a first date. But, I guess I'm old-fashioned that way.
It's like, okay, it's like, hey, by the way, would you like to see my van?
No, ever. Oh my God. You know that we have a mutual friend who had that van.
Yes.
Right? Like, he had the whole, tricked out paintings on the side, flames, blackout curtain mirrors van that he would drive to places. You're like, oh God. Wow. All right. I mean, he's in his 50s now, so luckily that thing was sold at least 2 to 3 years ago. It's fine.
Come on. It's like, I remember those vans. When you see one, you get all nostalgic and you think, yeah, does it have a refrigerator? Ooh, does it have a captain's chair?
Stop.
Ooh.
No, stop. Just please stop. No. What do you say, though? I mean, so you said that one of your favorite first date shows that was on TV recently.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Okay, for everybody that has Hulu, there was this really great movie, great television program with Martin Short, Steve Martin, and Selena Gomez, called Murders in the Building.
Only Murders in the Building.
Only Murders in the Building. And there was a whole episode about Steve Martin, who is a older man who's divorced, and he's interested in another individual that's in his building, a bassoonist.
A bassoonist. There's something just sexy about saying that, a bassoonist. Right.
They met and talked in the elevator, and then they went out on a date, and she disclosed something very, very personal and very close to her heart to Steve Martin, and he completely goes, nope, I got nothing.
Yeah, is there anything you would say?
He did not give anything back, and that date ended terribly. Later in the show, he's sitting there having a moment where He runs down to her apartment, knocks on her door, and gives her his intimate, detailed story. And she goes, and that's how we exchange.
So what I feel like you just said that you really liked about this particular story is the first date involved, forgive my words, but I'm going to say this. The first date involves some sort of life, emotional story, novel, word vomit, acceleration of intimacy in kind of one long monologue.
Yeah,
right?
it was an acceleration of intimacy, but how it was done was very tasteful.
But what's so attractive about that moment and where he kind of fails her in that moment, right, is that she just kind of drops all the guards and just sort of like lays out herself vulnerable.
Lays out herself vulnerable. He put up all the guards, but then later he came down and dropped all his walls.
So there's the exchange. There's a connection exchange, right?
There was the exchange.
Okay, so, it's sad to take romantic cues from Hollywood, but hey, what the fuck else do we have? There's something, yes, there is a resonant romance in that particular story.
There's
because
it
resonates about like being over 40 and kind of not being able to go through the bullshit dance of I'm fine, you're fine, are we fine together? Let's go be fine together.
Yeah, we're totally fine together. Let's go hang out.
Yeah, let's go hang out. Right? As opposed to being like,
picnic.
so, I've got 4 failed marriages, recovering alcoholic, slightly in control cocaine habit, and, might or might not have a couple of love children hanging out in Southern California. But really, I just want to snuggle. Take but maybe own a pug together, and
pugs are lovely.
Except when they cough, their eyes pop out.
Yeah.
But yes.
This is why I went corgis, but again, Bonnie will make fun of me again.
Oh God, let's not get into the corgi thing. Weird.
We've already talked about the corgi thing, so we're not going to revisit it.
Thank you for your sacrifice.
It's again, I will die on that cross.
Your self-restraint is so inspirational.
Should be.
The thing is like I can't see myself ever doing that. There's not like
again,
I think I have like a governor.
I'm talking about a scene that I enjoyed, and I'm like, I wouldn't even say that for a first date. I would leave that for a second, third, or even fourth date. But it's coming up with conversation topics that you want to see, like what type of chemistry you have. You want to see what type of compatibility you have. Like even in Austin, if someone says, "Hey, I live in South Austin. I live in Cedar Park. Peace."
Are you judgmental against Cedar Park suburbanites? Blake, how could you?
No, I'm judgmental about distance and being stuck on a tollway or 35.
All right. Well, that is something that I think carries through almost all dating decades, right? Geographically undesirable. And, sometimes you live in the Bronx and they live in Brooklyn. You're like, we just cannot. I don't believe in long distance relationships.
I dated somebody in Queens, and you would have thought, like I was in Afghanistan when I told her I lived in the Bronx.
Yeah, I mean, I have a sister-in-law who lives in Cedar Park, Leander, as you were talking about, and like she refers to it as Canada. She's like, you want to come up to Canada and see me? And I'm like, no, I don't. But all right, but that's that's something you can solve basically just looking at a profile or in the initial conversations. I think I'm just kind of going back to what do you say at the beginning? What do you say what should you say in a first date? What's your goal? What are you trying to establish? Yes, can they carry on a conversation, but what level of vulnerability do you need to offer with the expectation of getting?
Well, not just vulnerability, but how interesting can you be?
Can I be? I mean, I'm a salesman for a living. Honestly, like I could do a song and dance, period. So
I'm an ex-salesperson, ex-undercover narcotics officer, and a counselor.
And yeah,
I can put on any face.
Precisely. I'm just saying. So I'm like, I don't think me being interesting is that much of a challenge. But
in this day and age, most first dates don't. Those questions start off on the dating app or like by the introduction from a friend, where you get the details.
Yeah, I mean, but
the texting back and forth.
I mean, I am not the biggest fan of having like endless freaking text conversations before you meet in person. I can tell within 15 minutes whether this is gonna work out. I'm more about like I feel like the initial text conversations need to be vetting about whether or not there's a kidnapper van involved, whether or not there's a grooming situation involved, and kind of are there children that there's
do
our
political views match? But no, like these are all like as you get older, these are all questions that are now important because you're looking not only at dating someone, but as like I've mentioned earlier in podcasts, time is finite. It's like it's like when you're in your 40s, you're reaching midlife. Let's be honest, everybody. And it's like, and I'm not talking about the crisis. I'm talking about the midlife reevaluation. You're reevaluating what you want the rest of your life to look like.
And who you want to be in it, right? If this is midlife crisis, I want a Corvette and a trophy wife, frankly. But I would also say, like, really, the question is, time is finite. Who you want to spend it with, and how do you want to spend it? But I also think that's actually kind of one of the shitty things about dating in your 40s is that everybody's dating with such a purpose, like to advance the ball down the field, that we've kind of lost the ability to just have fun.
They're sitting there with a stopwatch, seeing how long things take.
Yeah, or
And like you said earlier, like the scene I liked in Murders in the Building, you were saying, yeah, it's forced, accelerated intimacy.
it is, and I feel like there's just something so I don't know,
Disingenuous, maybe.
yeah, and I mean, how do you tell like I'm laying out my life for you in the first 5 minutes as a really neat moment of vulnerability from a closed up person who is just saying that they like you versus somebody who is frankly off their meds and is just waving red flags around, right? Like, how do you perceive that as like, oh, okay, you're just a human who's had a life and you're kind of in a real space and you're offering me yourself really, or wow, you just got out of the loony bin psych ward and red flag, step away slowly, show the palms.
Or I sit there and no longer tell people I'm a therapist.
I'm really glad you leave that off your profile.
I completely say I specialize in voc rehab evaluation.
Yes, not that I have multiple degrees in manipulating humans. That's a good thing to leave
but
off.
again, it's like, what do you do? I work in rehabilitation. I work with individuals, strokes, and traumatic brain injuries.
Aw, that sounds very heroic. Very
Yeah.
nice. You sound kind of like a nurse.
Yeah, but it also doesn't sound like, hi, I'm a mental health counselor that's going to delve into the deepest, darkest part of your soul to explore it and hopefully work through trauma.
So that's what you think people are hearing when you say therapist. I think what I'm seeing or hearing when a guy says, hey, I'm a therapist, I think, dude, are you actually like judging me when I say things? Like, what is your therapeutic diagnosis of me while we're talking? I need you to get away from me right the fuck now. I mean, that's what I'm thinking is that, like, I get
Yes,
overly
because
self-conscious.
you're waiting for me to sit there and going, yes, I'm here to diagnose you and tell you you have 55 personality disorders. That's what, yeah.
Well, honestly, it makes the rejection, you start getting a little like, you start thinking, it's like, oh, he rejected me because I didn't look good in those pants. You start, man, he might have rejected me because he starts seeing the unmedicated bipolar in my family line. You know, I mean, like the insecurities can get real at that moment, right?
PCS, these insecurities are real, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm just saying that's what I think is like unattractive about dating a therapist in your 40s is like, oh man, I don't want to be judged, and if I get rejected by a therapist, what are they seeing that I'm not seeing?
And comically, like all the therapists I know, like, and I mentioned this earlier in a side conversation we had before we started recording, was most of the therapists I know are dating or involved with other people in other therapists.
Yeah, they date their own, and I'm like, well, that's because they're all kind of screwed up people. Love it anyway. I mean, I love me some therapists. Would be alive without them, but nobody gets into therapy profession because they're well balanced and secure in their life. We all get into therapy. We get into therapy because we need it.
If you need therapy, go see a therapist. Have that one objective person in your life to talk to.
Yeah, but don't try to date one and call it therapy. Just saying.
Yeah, yes, because dating a therapist and going to a therapist are two different things.
Yes. But you've stopped doing this, or at least what I've noticed about you, because you've stopped being the therapist on the first date. And I do actually think this was a transition coming out of the bouncer, because bouncers can kind of use the whole therapy shtick as a bit of a come on, as part of their flirting shtick. I'm not saying you did that. Totally did that. And you've stepped out of that, right? You're kind of like seeing that having somebody be attracted to you for how much you want to talk about them, maybe not the best of all dynamics to have in a date or relationship.
My whole essay to get into grad school was about my bouncing experiences and people talking to me.
Yes.
So
one might say that's not a weird transition, but it doesn't theoretically different ethics between bouncers and therapists and their patients. But one would hope. But your dating approach has changed from coming at it from a therapist point of view. Mine as well. I will say that I think I came at dating in I always had a professional persona. I was actually thinking about this. I was like, in my teenage and 20s, I think I went on dates wanting to make them like me, right? wanting to make a good impression. And so there was a bit of a performance art about, but it was really about the men walking away with a positive experience of me, right? Like reflecting back that they liked me. That was the goal. And then somewhere in my 30s, I got a little bit more. It occurred to me that I should probably figure out whether or not I liked them. And,
Right.
so my 30s maybe became a little bit more interrogative in their nature. And now I don't know what I'm trying to figure out. I do feel like if there's, what is it? It's about trying to hit on that chemistry is the word you use, but it's dynamic. It's figuring if there is this little dance. Maybe it's
Right.
dancing. It's about dancing.
Yeah, and like what type of dance is it? Like what
Yeah.
like what's the beat of the song that you're dictating this first date to? And that's where those questions come in. Sometimes if you're asking the right questions for the circumstance, that date is moving smoothly, everything's great. And then there's that one question that completely derails this and sends this off the tracks into the canyon in a burning ball of flame.
All right, like who'd you vote for in 2016?
Yeah.
But in some ways it feels more real and in some ways a lot less frightening than it used to. But in another way, it can go horribly wrong really quickly. You're right. But that's always been true for dating.
And also, our opinions and our immediacy of dating has changed. Where there's sometimes like when you go out and it's like, hey, I'm going to go on this date. What do I have to lose? Especially like when you're single in your 40s.
Right. I mean, what you're having to lose is the opportunity cost of spending time with somebody else. Time is finite, right? I could be out with my friends. I could be on my couch watching Mandalorian season 2 for the 12th time.
Yeah.
I could be doing these reliable pleasure things, or I could go see this new human and see how that goes.
Exactly. And then seeing that new human, you go out and see the new human. You might connect with the human. You might find out it's like, hey, I really like you, but I don't want to date you.
Yeah.
And you might go, it's like, you know what? You're hilarious. I'd love to shoot pool with you, but you might want to hang out with them platonically. Actually make a friend versus like trying to get in someone's pants.
Well, it's hard to make new friends, right? It's hard to. You're like, I have plenty of friends, man. I'm just kind of looking for. I'm looking for, friends that I can get in their pants. Wait, why is that so wrong? Friends with pants. I'm
I
looking for
love
these things.
friends with pants. No,
No, you
home
don't.
is the place for no pants.
Yeah,
Everyone.
no, you don't. Don't talk about your pants, love, liar.
So I have an uncomfortable question for you.
Oh dear Lord.
And I want to know how you responded because it's about that time, ladies and gentlemen, because we're sitting there talking about what type of questions do you ask? What was your worst first date question you've ever asked?
Oh God, that I've ever asked. I don't think I asked these questions with any kind of openness of heart. I'm pretty sure that the shittiest first date questions I asked was from a state of anger and punishment. So I'm trying to go through and see if there was a time in which I asked a difficult first date question that wasn't intended to humiliate and hurt. God, I don't know.
And while we're giving Bonnie time to think, this is the funness of the uncomfortable question because it makes you think.
The worst question I ever asked on a first date.
Yeah.
Clarify. I mean, this falls kind of weird in the category. Should you really be here trying to sleep with me when you're still feeling this conflicted about your wife? To be fair, this was a guy who asked me out, and I knew he was married. I also knew that he was, separated and going through the stages of, thinking about getting divorced. He was, he had children, and the children were not young, but he had 3 kids, and I think the youngest was like 10, and the oldest was like 16, and I was either the first date he'd been on since he married his wife.
Actually, you told me this story.
Yeah, and he and I he and I were friends. We had a common hobby that we enjoyed, and I'd known him about a year. And so when I met him, he was married with kids, and I knew when he kind of got separated. So I think I was I think probably the first person he'd ever asked out in maybe like 15 to 20 years. And I said yes. I mean, he was hot. He was hot. He was smart. He was charming. He's my jam.
Right on.
But I also knew, hot fucking mess, right? Still married being the big first key. And, the first date was a lot of back and forth conversation. But what happens with somebody who is still married or, freshly divorced is it just basically kind of winds up kind of holding a lot of space for their ongoing grief about a dying or dead relationship. And, he would kind of throw in some sexual come on lines in between.
Bow, chicka, bow, wow.
Yeah, in between sort of, kind of nakedly vulnerable, honest things about why his marriage fell apart. And I was like, I'm not quite sure you should be talking about wanting to sleep with me. Well, you still kind of feel this conflicted about your wife.
And actually, I'll be candid. I don't think that's a bad question.
I think it actually, I actually think his answer was stunningly honest too. And it was really kind of funny because I think I saw him again maybe a year or so later. I mean, his answer was, well, if you just agree to sleep with me, we could talk. We could just sort of get rid of all that conflicting emotions. And I was like, well, there's a tempting offer, thanks. But and then I did see him run into him about a year or so later, and he said, if you had just agreed to sleep with me, I never would have gone back to her. And I'm like, I don't
Boy, that's a lot of pressure.
Right. I'm like,
Well,
I don't really know what to
thanks.
say to that. I feel like
Your whole life changed because of me? What?
yeah, I mean, my magical pussy you didn't get anywhere near. Thank you. No, but I do remember thinking like that was it was a very me question because it was kind of really stabby, but I did remember saying it with kindness and care because he was a friend and I do care about him, but I did think that this was perhaps not what he really wanted to do. Except I do believe he really wanted to sleep with me. I do respect that, right? But I just don't actually think he really wanted to be here where he was in his life.
Right on.
But that's a kind of a deep first date.
That's an incredibly deep first date.
I broke my own. I gotta stop breaking my own rules. Don't date married men within the first year of their divorce. Don't date married men. Period. And definitely don't date them until a year after the divorce is final, people. Final. And don't date drunks and don't date drunk musicians.
Right on.
I've broken all those rules. Just once.
Just once.
I'll do anything once.
Like, I don't think that's a bad question that you asked. Not at all. Really valid question, especially if he's giving these details to you during that first date. That's a super valid question to ask.
Yeah, I mean,
because it's like maybe you should be having this conversation with your wife and not me.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a really valid question.
Thank you for validating my mean choices. I appreciate it.
No worries.
All right, so let me think about. You kind of sideswiped me with that. I hadn't actually thought of my uncomfortable question. Usually, I kind of get to my uncomfortable conversation because I notice things you kind of pussyfoot around and shy away from, and I went like, all right, there. Now I think.
Oh no! I figured I'd take the reins on this one and like go. No, I'm going for the jugular today.
This is kind of mean, but I kind of want to know it.
Kind of mean and want to know it. Okay, hit me.
All right, here we go. Have you ever deliberately played a different persona on a first date? I'm not quite sure what I'm trying to say, but like, have you ever gone on a first date with purely inauthentic reasons, there to just sort of get laid by any means necessary? You kind of know what I'm saying, right? You know what I'm asking.
What, did I ever put on the narc persona when I went out on a date?
Is that what you call it, the narc persona?
In my early 20s, I was trying to figure out who I was.
Okay.
Like I was, be candid honesty on that one. My early 20s, yes, absolutely. Just trying to figure out who the hell I was.
So what is this narc persona? Like, what do you mean when you say that? What does that persona mean to you?
Oh, no. It's like the narc persona. Like I worked as an undercover narcotics officer.
Also known as a narc. Yes, go ahead.
That individual I was when I would go out and I would be putting that face on. That was my no fear face.
What is a no fear face? Like, what is that persona? Describe him to me.
You're about to walk into the unknown. You don't know how the night's going to go.
Okay.
And you're looking at dangers and uncertainty and all those things that give you those sick feelings in your stomach. It's because, again, like in your early 20s, do you really know who you are?
Oh, I sure as fuck didn't.
Yeah, I sure the fuck didn't. And it was, and especially in my late 20s, it was easier.
What do you mean?
Safer. Like I was protecting me. I was protecting like the inner me.
By being completely sort of unseen by the other person.
Or like I was protecting myself from not ready to expose myself, show vulnerability, that type of thing.
But still with the goal to get laid, be liked, be attracted, right? Get attention, right? Like
attention, yeah, mostly. Getting laid was a bonus. If I got laid, that was like, woo, bonus. But it was never my end goal. It's usually all about the attention.
Because, that's I think, a prevalent fear. And I definitely know that I've been on some first dates where I feel like the other person is just this impenetrable. It's an impenetrable facade, right? And there's a goal here, which it's easy to assume that the goal here is like, sex, right?
Yeah.
But there's a goal here that's not really about me or who I am as a human. It's about getting something from this date situation. Sometimes it's conquering, sometimes it's sex, sometimes it's attention, sometimes it's something.
Yeah, as that person gets older, you wonder, what type of hurt have they experienced?
Maybe you do.
That got
Maybe
him.
you do, Mr. Therapist. I don't
No,
really
no,
think
no, no,
that'd
no,
be
no,
fun.
no, 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 no. Not a therapy thing. Totally not a therapy thing on this. What type of hurt have they experienced that got them to that place they're at now?
That guarded.
Yeah.
And that slick about it, right?
Yeah, yeah. As a therapist thing, oh yeah, absolutely. I can sit there and intellectually talk about that. But if you have someone that's super guarded on a date, first date, second date, fifth date, what have you, okay, lean in and go, okay, what the hell have you been through to get you here?
I mean, that seems a little aggressive. I would only do that if you...
And I'm not saying asking you that question. I'm saying it's like when you're looking at the people that are that guarded.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not
So you're
saying
saying like if you had emotionally arrested in your late 20s
yeah.
and were still that way in your late 40s, that would be a sign of being like, all right.
Yeah, and again, therapy, everybody. Go to it. Have at it.
Fair.
Work out those demons you had from your early 20s and 30s. It's okay.
They're really not that scary anymore.
But that's the thing. But now it's like, no, I'm not scared. I have nothing to lose. I have a chance at new human connection.
Right.
And that's actually what excites me about first dates is new human connection, because I'm about to connect to another human being that may become an intricate part of my life.
I don't know if, yeah. I'm not quite sure I got my answer because I don't think I articulated my question well, but you gave me an answer and I appreciate it.
No, you asked me when I would put on a personality. Yeah, I did totally. In my 20s, my late 20s, I totally put on a personality.
It wouldn't matter if you were on a date with your dream girl. There was no getting through that personality.
Nope.
Yeah. Okay.
Nope.
That I think maybe is what I was getting at. Is that like there was no? Because I do think this is a lie. I think both genders tell themselves, right? Or all genders tell themselves, right? Like oh, that emotionally unavailable person. If I could be the one to penetrate, save them, and I'm like, that looks like a well rehearsed show.
Yeah.
And
also, I'm not a unique unicorn in this. Male friends, female friends, non-binary friends have all said they have some type of facade they use protectively.
Well, I mean, I think that's also a human thing, right? My question is, I mean, we've all got facades, and part of the human condition is trying to figure out how to negotiate moments of letting that vulnerability down, which is where this entire conversation comes from. I'm not actually looking to see somebody. I don't actually want to see somebody emotionally naked at all times. I would want to hug them and maybe give them a blanket
And a warm beverage.
It's when that's a persona that's kind of predatory.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's pursuing a goal that seems disingenuous to the nature of the interaction, right?
And also, like, what would bring that personality out is just that. If I spell something disingenuous, I think one skill I do have, I can find the psycho in the room.
It is a gift. You're like a truffle pig.
Yeah, I can absolutely find the psycho in the room. And if I'm on a date with an individual that I find unsafe.
If you actually are on a date with the psycho in the room.
Yeah, that's happened to me once or twice. Wow.
Recently?
That's another story.
Anyway, continue on. You're on a date with the
it's
psycho
like
in the
if
room.
I spell it, yeah, you can bet your ass that personality comes on.
Okay, so now it's a defense mechanism as opposed to a personality trait.
Right. Everyone's been on a date where they're like, whoa, I dodged a bullet.
Yes.
I don't care how old you are, what had happened. You've all been on that date where you went, that sigh of relief when you walk in your door, get into that cab, walk into a different bar and order a stiff drink and go, I got a story for you.
Dodged a bullet. Don't worry, he doesn't know where I live. I hope. Man, so much fun, this dating thing, right? It is supposed to be fun.
So, since we have that email, info@drinkingwithyourexes.com.
Drinking with your ex.
Drinkingwithyourx.com. My bad. But again, info@drinkingwithyourx.com. I want to hear what your first date questions are.
Yeah, actually.
That would be pretty awesome for all 5 listeners in Peoria, Indiana.
Respect, we love you,
Respect.
and frankly, we probably need some advice. So
I'm pouring one out for my homies right now for y'all.
We love you, Indiana.
We really do want to hear what the first date questions are, because this is like a topic we'd actually like to revisit, just from like listener to hear what you all have to say.
Yeah, well, based on some of my more recent first dates, Lord knows I could definitely use some advice, some other ideas.
Yeah,
other
some
options.
of us might need more advice.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Anyway, this episode of Drinking with Your Ex is brought to you today by the Prisoner Red Wine. Know who you are in the conversation.
Yes, you might be shackled to a table at that first date. Are you going to know if you're like to get away? Let us know.
Always beware when the bottle is opened and poured into your drink. Safety first. I'm sorry, safety third, but safety first. All right, I am Bonnie Neal.
And I am Blake Thompson.
And it's time for a refill.
Have a great night, everyone.